Five Nights at Freddy's is an absolute juggernaut of a franchise at this point that even thinking about it is kind of overwhelming. It started out as a point and click video game made by a single guy, and now it feels like it has overtaken every corner of the internet. I'm convinced 40% of YouTube is just FNAF theories now. And as the series expands, it consumes everything around it, becoming a corporate monolith determined to rule the entire entertainment landscape. It can be easy to forget about the little guy. And by the little guy, I mean the people that are doing the honest work of writing Five Nights at Freddy's creepypastas so a 26-year-old man can read them and critique them. And while I may only kind of be one of those people doing the honest work, I most definitely am the 26-year-old man. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be reading a bunch of short Five Nights at Freddy's creepypastas that I found on the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom site. I'll be giving some of my critiques and thoughts on them and talking about what I think they do well and some of the interesting concepts that I find along the way. If you're looking for a video where someone mercilessly rips apart the work of literal children who write stories for fun, this is not going to be that video. I don't like to be mean-spirited with my critiques, and honestly, the fact that some of these people even wrote these stories regardless of quality is very impressive. FNAF is new enough that these people are most definitely living in our modern dopamine-addicted society with iPads thrown in front of their faces as soon as their eyes can learn how to focus, and they're out here writing stories. That's awesome. So I'll be trying to critique things and most likely laughing when some of the more absurd things happen, but I hope that any aspiring authors can find this video informative. But enough introing, let's get into some Five Nights at Freddy's creepypastas. Our first one here is called The Bite of 97. What happened? On June 3rd, 1997, a restaurant named Mario's Family Diner had an unexpected surprise late one evening when one of their animatronics had a technical malfunction during performance for a child's birthday and reportedly and cleanly pierced its square teeth into the child's head after the bullies got him to see the said character up close and personal. That's known as the Bite of 97. So a lot of these stories are kind of doing alternate timeline versions of the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. That's something that I'm pretty familiar with because I have an alternate reality Five Nights at Freddy's series that I've been working on. There's a video on my channel that I've already done already. And I think it's a really cool concept to kind of play with in this universe. All these are going to have kind of some basic grammar issues that I won't spend a lot of time picking out. This first one just notably has a really, really long run-on sentence, and certain things like bullies got him to see the said character is all capitalized when that should not be the case. Something that a lot of these stories do, because the original Five Nights at Freddy's games had very little actual character in them. People didn't really have names for characters and such. They give names to these characters, which I think is really interesting and a cool way to kind of insert themselves into the story. Everybody except for the bullies and Wallace McMahon evacuated the scene immediately, calling for an ambulance. Wallace McMahon is shocked and disappointed because he just witnessed the death of his son. I mean, I know we're in Five Nights at Freddy's territory, which means there will be child death abound, but describing a man as shocked and disappointed because his son just died is kind of funny to me. Shocked makes sense, but disappointed is kind of funny because it's almost like Wallace is if only my son had drinking more milk, his cranium could have withstood the force of the Five Nights at Freddy's animatronic piercing his skull. The bullies celebrated until help arrived. Jeez. That's where the bullies made their escape. The restaurant was questioned later about their skills and dedication and were later under investigation, since none, yep, I said none, of the workers or even the manager came to the dying child's aid, and afterwards the people were sued for legal negligence by the organization Parents Union Against Unsafe Necessities and Mechanical Violations. That's a really long acronym, and I was wondering if it was going to be a word that it would form, an actual acronym, but it really just would make Pua One Mv. So, obviously not an actual acronym. Ultimately, the owner agreed to settle the deal of $200 after not having to pay enough money for lawyers to justify their actions in court. Again, most of these authors are very young, so I don't blame them for not knowing how a settlement works, but it's funny to imagine, you don't have enough money to pay your lawyers, so you're okay, fine. My animatronics, my negligence killed your child, so I'll just do the minimum fee of $200 and that should make it all clean. The animatronics, along with the diner 30 years later, had been set ablaze by an unknown intruder who turned out to be Terrence Carlson, that was dubbed the 9 p.m. motorist, since eyewitnesses encountered the suspicious hooded figure roaring his ATV down Highway 491 and was on the other side of the road, facing the new area of a popular pizza joint known as Jake's Jazz Dog's Grand Pizza, leaning against an oak tree, maybe waiting for his deed to be done, and over within seconds. So again, more just run-on sentence issues, but honestly, I think, especially with younger writers, run-on sentences are almost kind of inspiring because it's you have so many ideas in your head that you want to chain together so quickly. That's honestly a good sign in writing, and then later on you can find out how to kind of clean up some of those run-on sentences. I would much rather an author make a mistake, especially a younger author that was in the pursuit of writing something maybe more complicated or grand. I think that's a good way to kind of make mistakes. It shows that your heart is in the right spot and you want to make your stories really interesting and cool. And I do like that this story in particular does seem to work as like a kind of alternate reality interpretation of the bite of 87 or the bite of 83, because for some reason there are two very consequential bites in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. And honestly, I haven't kept up with Five Nights at Freddy's very well, so there's probably a number of more consequential bites, so let me know if those exist in the comments. But even fun little things like the 9 p.m. Motorist and Highway 491 and Jake Jazzdog's Grand Pizza, it's just fun little twists on the formula. I personally always love when something like remixes elements of another story. I think it's a really fun way to write your own story. And again, if you're a younger author trying to maybe make something based off an IP that you really love, like Five Nights at Freddy's, I think this is a really great way to do it. Overall, this is certainly an entertaining story. Just the concept of the dad being disappointed that his son died is a little funny to me, but I think, again, there's a lot of promise here, and I'm sure this author hopefully has gone on to write more interesting things and more like cleaner things in the future. Okay, our next story is called the September 5 Incident. There are a lot of these stories that are written as incident reports for something that happens in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, and again, it's a format that I think is really cool, so I like that they do a lot of these. The small town of Yellow Bridge, located in Bosque County, Texas, was blessed on April 14th, 1972, when a family diner opened its doors with 8 colorful animatronics. The diner's name was in German, Schweinenhöhle. Please forgive me, German viewers. In English, Pig Cave / Swine Den. I really like when a diner is named something like Pig Cave, because then when I go in there and stuff my little pig boy mouth, I don't feel like I'm out of place. The 8 robots consisted of mostly farm animals, the exception being a simple marine mammal, walrus. The diner attracted all sorts of life, some more egregious than others. One of these bad apples, sorry about that, I remembered something. One of these bad apples was a man in his 40s that went under the alias Augustus Anstetten. This degenerate went from cleaning up after closing hours to suiting up and securing the restaurant with his PR-24. This decision made by the owners would prove fatal, as on warm Tuesday night, September 5th, a band of adolescent troublemakers arrived in Schweinenhöhle and began vandalizing the windows with champagne. Honestly, if you're going to vandalize my restaurant and you're a kid and you manage to not only pay for it, but get your hands on alcohol, it's kind of impressive. The act concocts an uncontrollable rage with Mr. Anstetten, who lashes out via bludgeoning one kid to the ground and wrestles with the others who tried fighting him. Those miscreants die as well. Mr. Anstetten draws their bodies to the back rooms, cuts them up into bits, and pours the body parts inside of the 8 animatronics. He mops the blood and leftover gore, and finally leaves his shift to head out for Dallas. I'm gonna level with you guys. I did not vet these stories before I read them. I just kind of found some ones that I thought looked interesting. So if these get horribly violent, then I'm sorry. In the following weeks, patrons complained of a funky odor, but much to their disappointment, the staff couldn't uncover the source of the smell. A policeman named Steven Vukovic, that does not sound like a Texas name to me, but whatever, arrives at the diner to inform the owners about the missing teenagers. Unfortunately, the proprietors couldn't give much insight, as they never saw the gang visit the location prior to their disappearance. Schweinenhöhle continued business until May 25, 1994, when the numbers of customers dropped to 0. Here are the names, ages, and birthdays of the victims. James Farmer, 12, Lucy Sherwood, 14, Carl Corcoran, 13, Reggie Zhang, 14, Gary Parr, 12, Carl King, 13, Samantha Braun, 14, Cosmo Craven, 12. I was really hoping that last name would be Cosmo Kramer and that the person who wrote this just accidentally stumbled upon a Seinfeld name right there. Something that's kind of cool with a lot of these stories is I don't really have the dates for when they were first posted, but a lot of them seem to have been posted like back when the games were very first coming out. So a lot of these were before we even had like names and faces to put on people in the Five Nights at Freddy's games, like William Afton. So it's cool to see them kind of write their own lore in order to try to fill in some of those missing details. And I think this story is appropriately gruesome, especially for early Five Nights at Freddy's. It is kind of funny that, again, these 12 and 13 and 14-year-old kids got their hands on champagne and vandalized the restaurant that the guy who, I don't even know if he owned it, he was just like working there, was so mad that he bludgeoned all the kids to death, which is horrifying. If I keep talking about kids being bludgeoned to death and having a smile on my face like I did during that last take, I'm going to be put on a watch list. But overall, I thought this one was interesting. I think it's written a little bit better than the last one, which is cool. There are some weird writing mistakes, obviously. And again, there were some weird things with like the names not sounding like they'd be people from Texas, but I'm sure Texas is a relatively diverse place, so maybe you do have a Steven Vukovic there. It's funny because it gives us the names of 8 victims, which in any, regular universe, 8 child murder victims is kind of insane, but in FNAF that happens like every other weekend based on a pile of dead children in that series. All right, next up we have the Bite of 79. On January 15th, 1979, a busted-up diner named Sydney's Saloon had an unexpected surprise late one evening when one of their animatronics had a technical malfunction during a child's birthday party. The canine machine pierced its long, monochrome teeth into one of the patrons' arms and fell right on top of the man. Everybody except for the gentleman's wife evacuated the scene immediately, calling for an ambulance. The wife was having trouble lifting the idle animatronic off her husband and needing assistance before help arrived. The restaurant was questioned later about their skills and dedication and were later under investigation, since none of the workers or even manager came to the man's aid. The two owners were sued for legal negligence by the organization Parents Union Against Unsafe Atrocities and Mechanical Abominations. The couple agreed to settle the deal of $200. On October 9th, the animatronics, along with the pizzeria, had been set ablaze by an unknown intruder that was dubbed the Midnight Motorist. Eyewitnesses have spotted the hoodlum roaring his FLT tour glide down Highway 491 after completing the attack. Victim, Haruki Kojiro. So this seems to be a rewrite or reinterpretation of the Bite of 97 one that we read just a little bit ago. It has pretty much the same exact story, the difference being that the person that is killed in this one seems to be a man and not a child, and hopefully this man's father is not disappointed they were killed by a robot. And then also the organization has a different name, but also equally hard to say. In this one, it's Parents Union Against Unsafe Atrocities and Mechanical Abominations, so Puawama. It's a little bit better. This one again has that weird settlement of $200, which is not enough money, but it makes a little bit more sense because the guy wasn't killed, he was just injured by the animatronic. And now we have the Midnight Motorist instead of the 9 p.m. Motorist, so this must have come out after Pizzeria Simulator, I assume. I don't know which one of these two is the original. This one definitely has a better flow to it. It's written a lot better. There's still some run-on sentences and some weird kind of descriptions, like the canine machine pierced its long monochrome teeth, which is like, maybe it just feels a little bit unnatural in the way that's written. But again, it's unnatural, but also aspirational, so I prefer that rather than just being like dull and boring. Okay, this next one is called A Night Stuck in Freddy Fazbears Pizza. This one, unlike the ones that we read so far, is not an incident report. This is a first-person account by a very British narrator. I will not besmirch the name of you British people by trying to do a British accent. I'll just do it in my classic yeehaw American accent. It was October 30th, 1987, and it was Halloween. Okay, do British people have a different Halloween than American people? Because Halloween's definitely October 31st, and it's always October 31st here, but maybe it's different in Britain, so all my British viewers let me know. My mom took me to Freddy Fazbears Pizza, a reopened pizzeria. I dressed in my Chica outfit that I had bought from the costume shop. Chica was my favorite mascot when I was 7. When we got to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, we discovered that it was a special Halloween night. I had pepperoni pizza for my meal and had Freddy cupcakes for dessert. This is like embarrassing. I love pizza so much that like this is making me so hungry making this video right now. After eating, I ran to join the other kids dancing in front of Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, who were singing a song about pizza. I was the most daring one and ran right up to the stage. A member of the staff rushed to me and tugged me away, warning me not to touch any of the animatronics or they'll get angry. Absolutely wild that the staff knows about the violent tendencies of the animatronics and they're like, as long as these unruly kids just stay away, we won't have any more child deaths. Hopefully their skulls are nice and strong too, so we're not disappointed in them. As soon as all the staff weren't looking, I climbed onto the stage and started to gaze. I tripped over my own feet and flew into Bonnie, knocking his guitar out of his hand and twisting his hand out of place. Bonnie opened his jaws wide, and I started to cry and jumped off the stage. A repairman was rushing in the door a few moments later and fixed Bonnie, but I was still scared because Bonnie was still giving me a look. It was soon 9 o'clock and the pizzeria closed. Mom was just going, but I dropped my Let's Eat bib and went to pick it up. Mom rushed out of the pizzeria and the door was locked, but I was still inside. I tiptoed past the animatronics, abandoned on the stage, but they were staring at me. Okay, I'm pretty sure animatronics just stare all the time by default. They don't like sleep like humans do, but maybe haunted animatronics do, so I should give the story the benefit of the doubt. Chica stepped forward and I ran all the way to the office and found the night guard, Mike Schmidt, looking at the camera. "Hi, little girl. What the heck are you doing here?" Mike said. I dropped my Chica bib and my mom walked out of the pizzeria. I started to weep. "It's okay, kid. You just have to, survive. I mean, stay here till 6 a.m. with me. Piece of cake," Mike gabbled. And that's the end of the story. This one was probably like a first chapter of something that never got finished. So if the author wants to come back and finish this story like years later on, I will read the rest of it on my channel. So if you're watching this, I will read the rest of your story if you're interested in finishing this. It is kind of funny to have Mike do that Freudian slip of like, you just have to survive. I mean, stay here. Like he's like in his mind, he's like, this night's just gonna be absolute hell, and now I have to do it with a little kid with me too. But this is a good way to kind of set up the story. You have like the girl who's already pissed off the animatronics. They'll probably be really angry with her all night, and Michael will have to save her. Okay, our next one is called The New Freddy Fazbears. Again, it's another very, very short story. The year was 1987. Freddy Fazbears had reopened. I decided to go. I was 12, so the animatronic shows were kind of dumb. I kind of love the little angst that we're getting so far. If I were a 12-year-old kid going to Freddy Fazbears, this is exactly what I would act like. This is a tangentially related story, but when I was 14, I think, I was in like a percussion ensemble from my high school, and one of my friends in there, I won't say his name, but he was like 17 years old at the time, and his parents had us like surprise him at Chuck E. Cheese for his birthday. And like the idea of going to Chuck E. Cheese with all your high school friends is like, I think kind of fun. Like, okay, we can go play all these games, and like it's kind of funny because it's Chuck E. Cheese and we're all older. We can like enjoy this all a little bit ironically. But the fact that it was a surprise birthday made it so much funnier because my friend was just like totally sold on the idea of like my parents are taking me, a 17-year-old kid, to Chuck E. Cheese, and he was just so into it. He was like playing the Wheel of Fortune game the entire time, just having so much fun. And then when we surprised him, he thought that we had just gone there like independently of him. We're like, no, we're here to surprise you for your birthday, man. So that's a funny story that happened. Honestly, I was 14 at the time, and I was not angsty at all. I had so much fun at that Chuck E. Cheese. The Balloon Boy was stupid. Kid Cove was only for little kids, but one area I liked, the puppets area. He gave prizes, nothing else. His area was not quiet because it had a faint music box in the background that always calmed me down. The only downside was that the puppet was creepy. He had an odd, smiling face and never said a word. Can't imagine what that would be like. He only laughed when he gave kids prizes. But back to what I was saying. It was a great place and had delicious pizza and fun games. This kid was absolutely ragging on Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and is like, back to what I was saying, this place is awesome. I'm like, no, you weren't saying it was awesome. You're saying it was dumb and for kids. You can't gaslight me. But sadly, one time, I accidentally got locked in the pizzeria. I walked around trying to find a spare key or something to break the door with. I found a room labeled Parts and Services. I knew old animatronic pieces were in there. They might break a door. I opened it. It was dark. Luckily, I had a flashlight on me. Actually, surprisingly sound logic for this Five Nights at Freddy's stories. He's like, he sees the parts and service room, and he's like, there are animatronic parts in there. I could use that to break the door. It's like a rare thing to see in stories like this, is like very sound logic. I mean, granted, there are probably like chairs and stools you could use to break the door, but I like the thinking on this kid. I turned it on. I found a loose arm on an old Bonnie the Bunny model and ripped it right off. I had trouble walking back to the exit. I stumbled into the puppets area. The music box was playing. I found a key. I threw the arm behind me, knowing the key would be easier to use. The arm fell on the music box. It stopped playing. The puppet then rose out of his box. He said, "Let's play," and ran after me. I was quicker, but just a bit. I quickly unlocked the door, got outside, and locked it back up again. I ran home crying. I got back home, haunted by the nightmare that forever stays in my mind. The memory of the puppet. It's me. Maybe it's just because I watched the Blame It on George video about the Super Mario 64 Screamer, but I think this story is supposed to be a screamer of sorts. If you don't know what a screamer is, it's like the Scary Maze game from back in the day where it's like, it's typically a video or a game or something that's very chill, and you get something that pops up in your face and screams at you. This is trying to be like the written version of that with like, it wants to lead you down like, of the puppet. It's me, and then we get the low quality PNG in the corner of the puppet face. But I will say the puppet is genuinely unsettling. That's one of the things in the games that creeped me out a lot when I was younger. So I like that they're using that particular aspect of the story because I do think it's pretty scary. And I like the kind of speedrun nature of like, I have to get out of here. Let me go find something in the parts and service room. Oh, I found a key. I don't need this arm anymore. I'll throw it on. That ruins the music box, which makes the puppet come out and try to attack me. It has a good like internal logic about it in a way that I feel like is not very common in a lot of these amateur, especially Five Nights at Freddy's stories, so that's pretty neat to see. Okay, next up we have a surprise visit to Jazz Dogs, and this one's a little bit longer. I believe that Jazz Dogs was mentioned in an earlier story, so maybe this belongs to like a greater extended universe that I don't know about. You know, parents are always finding new ways to entertain or enrich their kids. In fact, the earliest years are the most important in a child's life when it comes to developing their young mind. This was no different for me. Throwback to my developmental psychology class that I took like 5 years ago. I used to think that taking those psych classes was a mistake because I didn't end up studying psychology, but now I'm using that knowledge to understand this Five Nights at Freddy's fanfiction, so maybe it wasn't a mistake. My mom would always take me to the arcades, complete with all sorts of top-of-the-line games. Or the parks, with the jungle gyms that were always scalding hot from being in the sun all day. I remember when I was in middle school, my family took a trip to Bear Lake in Utah, and they had one of those awesome, like, old-school like metal carousel things that you could spin around and they go really fast. It's like the coolest playground toy, but also like one of the most dangerous ones. And like I grew up in Washington and that's where I live now. And like there's always like shade over everything because there's so many trees here and stuff. This was not the case in Bear Lake, Utah. That metal carousel was just like baking in the sun for hours. And we were like, we want to go on this thing. But it was like some sort of medieval torture device. It was still fun though. I remember just like being spun faster and faster on it, hoping that like the wind speed of it spinning would be enough to cool it down, or that like the dizzy sensation would be enough to dull the rest of my senses so I wouldn't feel the absolute scalding hot metal that I was on. So a very good slice of life relatable part of the story right here. There weren't too many options to choose from, but for what they were, those were what made up my fondest childhood memories. As a treat for my 13th birthday, my mom took me to Jake Jazz Dog's Grand Pizza. It's a fun land for all ages, from what I can remember. The animatronics were amazingly designed. It looked really promising, to be honest with you, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited about going there. The pizza was what you'd expect, greatly put together, and the pizza also tastes wonderfully delicious. I'm gonna level with you guys, if I'm going to any sort of family pizzeria that has like toys and games, I'm not expecting greatly put together pizza, so that's a little bit of a disconnect here. I'm expecting to eat a hot circle of delicious garbage. But you didn't only go for the food. You went to see Jake Jazz Dog and his gang of colorful friends, Bobby Bill, Garfield, and others. Thinking back on it now, the animatronics were pretty good for the time. They had full body movement when singing on stage. In fact, I remember that after a few songs, Jake Jazz Dog and his friends would come off the stage and walk around interacting with the kids. They would walk up to the kids and say things to them, and whenever there's new customers around, then colorful mascots would see them as friends. I even know that Barry always plays the keyboard. Trust me, I remember that the animatronics themselves even play arcade games with the kids who are solo, or with themselves for that matter. To keep the kids entertained, there would be little games they'd play like Where's Bobby Bill, which was just the Where's Wally series, I Spy, which was just I Spy, or Barry's Birdseed Hunt, where kids would be given small seeds and Barry would chase after them like a game of tag. I remember I had finished my slice of pizza and I asked if I could play the seed hunt game with Barry. My mom said it was okay, so I got up and one of the workers gave me a tiny bag of birdseed. I was actually really excited. Barry was my favorite. Me and about 7 other kids, which are my friends, were given small seeds, and that's when Barry spotted the seeds and jumped off the stage, or just spotted the seeds if off the stage. He yelled, "Here I come! Hand over the seeds!" And that's when we all scrambled. It was great fun. I looked over my shoulder and saw Barry chasing around the other kids, and at one point, he even almost got me. Boy, Barry was fast. It was me, Barry. I was the one that got the seeds. I didn't quite know why at the time, but while I was in the middle of playing the birdseed hunt game, my mom lifted me abruptly and carried me swiftly toward the back room. She said things like, "You've got to go right now," and "You never should have come here." I'd never heard such sass in her voice before. It's so funny for the mom to be like, "You never should have come here." Like, you're the one that took him there, so why are you being so weird about this? I thought that maybe it was because some kids started crying when Barry caught them and mistook them for birdseed. They had screamed really loud and started sobbing. I remember that a bunch of parents rushed over. There was all sorts of commotion and noise, but I was too busy having fun to notice that anything was wrong. But now that I think of it, I do remember that as my mom carried me through the back room, I saw Barry standing above the body of a kid he had caught. He was staring right at me, with crimson liquid dripping from his beak, which is the last thing I've seen before I gotten killed by Wallace McMahon. Here I come, hand over the seeds. Wait, wasn't Wallace McMahon the dad of the kid that died in the first story that we read? Sorry to believe that Wallace McMahon, was so disappointed at his son dying that he became a vengeful person and started killing other kids. It's also really interesting that you think the kid in the story gets out totally clean because it's like, oh, another kid gets killed and he gets rushed out and he just barely sees that. But then at the end of the story it reveals that he is killed by Wallace McMahon. I'm sure there's some greater Wallace McMahon lore that I don't understand right now, but that was a fun little connection to have there. I'm putting together theories in my mind. Also, at the very end of the story, there's something that just says, moral of the story, always like Chuck E. Cheese is better. Chuck E. Cheese can also be kind of dangerous. I know sometimes they have a beast version of their mascot hanging around, so you might want to watch out for that. Sorry, I should say the full name. There's a beast version of Charles Entertainment Cheese there. All right, our next story is called Five Nights at Freddy's 0, and this one comes with an author's note that says, "This is some old crap. What are you doing here? Dicity Poke. Originally Spy vs. Spy." I'm just old enough that I didn't really grow up on internet forums. I had a Facebook when I was 13 and 14 and throughout high school, but I wasn't on forums like this. So all this stuff is kind of gibberish to me. I spent the majority of my childhood either playing outside in the backyard with a stick or playing Sonic Adventure 2 over and over again religiously. You probably know a horror game franchise called Five Nights at Freddy's, right? Well, you're in luck because it just so happens that I do know that Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. Well, there was rumored to be an unreleased game which claimed to be the first Five Nights at Freddy's game in the franchise back in 2013. It was believed that Scott wanted to make a real horror game unlike the other ones and like the other horror games like Slender, Amnesia, and Outlast, but then realized what mistake he made and stopped. At first, it almost seems like a diss for him to say that Five Nights at Freddy's isn't a real horror game like Slender, Amnesia, and Outlast. But then it comes back around because it says that it was a mistake that he made and then he stopped. And given that the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, I assume, lives in a solid gold mansion right now, I'd say they made the right choice. The time I found the download and played it was on December 13th, 2014, while I was messing around with some inspect elements in Scott's website. I decided to type in scottsgames.com/offlineexe for some random reason. But when I pressed enter, a download appeared titled Five Nights at Freddy's 0. I was confused by why Scott would add a download in such a random link, but I was pretty proud of myself for being the first to discover it. When I clicked on it, it took me to a menu which was the same menu as Five Nights at Freddy's 1, but with the version 0.31 gone and the Scott Cawthon 2014 and the title were replaced with Scott Cawthon 2013 and Five Nights at Freddy's 0. I hit new game. It didn't take me to an intro with a newspaper stating that Freddy Fazbears Pizza needs a night guard. In fact, it just skipped straight to the game. The security office didn't look very interesting. A gray blank wall with no posters, a hallway in the middle, and a table with a puppet plushie which seems withered with a cracked mask, blood running from the eye holes, and organs bursting from the chest. Now this is a true creepypasta because we have organs bursting from a chest. Classic creepypasta trope there. This is also very much giving me the same vibes as like the old videos you'd watch on YouTube of like somebody who found a secret in Super Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, and they'd have like, oh, I got the black tunic in Ocarina of Time, and this is how you unlock it. I always fall for that stuff, hook, line, and sinker. I remember there was one video where it's like, oh, you have to use the hover boots to glitch up to the corner of the Temple of Time, which will bring you to Super Mario 64, but you'll be a green bunny, and then you can unlock the black tunic in Ocarina of Time, and like, I used to say I was a smart kid. I don't think I was a smart kid because I believed all that crap, and it never worked if you couldn't guess. Then there was a phone call. Hello? Well, if you're hearing this, the chances are death will come for you. You made a poor career choice. Death will come for you? What kind of employee would say that? I decided to open the camera. I realized that there was only two cameras. Cam 8 and Cam -6. I flipped to Cam 8 to find that Golden Freddy was standing in what appears to be a child's bedroom with a realistic baby in a crib behind him, crying. The strange thing about Golden Freddy is that his jaw was missing and he had bloodshot eyes. I switched to Cam -6, which had no signal. I checked the hall lights to find Golden Freddy, again with no jaw, but now with blank, soulless eyes. I tried to close the door, finding out that the door button wouldn't work, as it looked like blood was spilled on it. Of course it wouldn't work. Why would a door button covered in blood work anyways? I checked the hall light once more to see if Golden Freddy was gone. When I checked it, it went black for a second, then went back to normal, except that the door was absent, and that the puppet's purple tears and lipsticks were gone, as if they were washed off. I checked the cameras again. This time, there was a new camera. Cam 0. I checked Cam 0, finding that it was a non-8-bit recreation ending of Fnaf 3, where Purple Man gets killed inside Springtrap, but not 3D rendered. In fact, it looked as if it happened in real life. In fact, the ghosts of the 5 children looked like if they burned alive. That was when I heard a scream. In fact, it sounded very realistic. I actually jumped out of my seat. I scrambled onto my feet and checked Cam 8. When I checked it, something was different. The baby that was in the crib was absent and Golden Freddy was soaked in blood. Blood drained from my face and was refilled with dread. A dread that Golden Freddy would look at me, so I quickly switched to Cam -6. When I saw Cam -6, I was horrified. What I saw was a picture of a child inside an abandoned Freddy Fazbears Pizza, lying face down with the same details as the puppet plushie in the office. Cracked open head, bleeding eye sockets, and organs bursting from the chest. But unlike the puppet plushie, the organs were spilling out of the mouth. And behind him were 2 legs with purple pants on it that were covered in blood. Possibly the Purple Man. Probably a good guess there, honestly. I almost vomited at that point, so I closed down the monitor, only triggering Golden Freddy's jump scare. Not the same one Golden Freddy would use in this version. Golden Freddy actually had teeth showing like the poster of Golden Freddy you would see very rarely, including the slowed down version of the scream for 1 second until my computer crashed and went blue screen. At that point, what I saw from the corner of my eye, what looked like a bloody jawless Golden Freddy. I quickly looked at where he was standing, but I saw nothing. I looked back at my computer screen, which was still on the BSOD. I tried restarting, but I got the same blue screen, meaning I had to reboot my computer. This time, it booted up as normal. That's when I got to the Windows 7 startup sound. In the middle of that, the same Golden Freddy jump scare appeared, but unlike the other one, it didn't cause my computer to go blue screen. In fact, it stayed even after the scream. I tried shutting down my computer by holding down the power button, but it didn't work. I waited for it to end. It stayed for 2 minutes, then it finally went to my desktop. This time, there was a notepad on my desktop. It had no name. I opened it only to find that it said, "Can you guess who I am?" That's the way I'm going to read that because that's the way it's written. Blood drained from my face. I deleted the text file and emptied my recycle bin. Last night, when I was about to enter my bedroom, I saw the same figure running through the hallway. There's a section down here that says Eclipse, but I assume it means epilogue, and it's not the third book in the Twilight franchise. It had been 2 months after the incident when I played FNAF Zero. I typed in scottsgames.com/offlineexe to see if it still worked or not, but it only directed me to a page with a white background and black text saying, "This page is no longer available, as it will give you a download link that will harm your computer." My final conclusion was that Scott's website was hacked by a person with a sick, twisted mind and added the download link, and that Scott later found that out and deleted it to avoid others finding it and blaming it on him. 2 weeks later, I received an email from an unknown person. I clicked on it. I found out that it only had 3 words. It was me. So I like the idea of this. I always like stories that have like media that you read or watch or something that like infects your mind, like House of Leaves kind of does. It is kind of funny that the conclusion is like, oh, somebody hacked Scott's website with this evil, like insane demonic virus that they put on their computer, and like he was just like, oh, I'll delete that really quick. Like that's probably more cause for concern. I think the conclusion that we're supposed to reach is that this game had like a virus that was Golden Freddy himself, who was like coming out of the screen to kill people. Which honestly, given from like what I last remember about Five Nights at Freddy's just a while back, didn't William Afton turn into like a computer virus? So this was a little bit ahead of the curve. Of course, we have the obligatory hyper-realistic ultra violence of like the kid that's dead in the very graphic way, which probably doesn't need to be in this story, but like if you're going to be a younger author writing something, this is probably what you're going to write about because it's like edgy and creepy and very scary for that age. But then when you grow up, you realize that like things like that aren't necessarily scary, they're just edgy, and the really scary things are like rent payments. Okay, this next one's going to be our last one for the night. This one's called Scratched Out. So where do I begin? Okay, I was watching TV when my phone rang. It was this lady. She said something about a tween babysitter at a sleepover and babysit my daughter and her friend. Now, I could live with that. I got on the internet and looked for a nice place we could get a snack and they could play there. I found about 100,000 places, including Freddy Fazbears Pizza, Frisky's Fry, Star's Cookies and Sweets, and the Boob Prison. I'll take the last one, please. They were all pretty much the same things. Shows, fast food, animatronics, forbidden rooms. Then, after seeing 99,999 places, one caught my eye. It was called Scratch Cat's Coding Center, or something like that. Guess what caught my eye? Scratch Cat's Coding Center. I always wanted to learn to code, and it was nearby. That was the place for me. Is this like My Best Friend Dare Me to Ruin His Life, where this is like a backdoor story to teach us like the virtues of coding in a modern society? My thoughts were interrupted by my doorbell ringing 10,000 times. I got up and opened the door. The lady had sweat dripping down her face. She said, "Joe, Emily, be good with Richie. Be back at 8 o'clock. I thought, 3:30 to 8? Are you kidding me? But she already left, and the kids were eating my nachos. 3:30 to 8 is like not that insane of a time to be gone. I don't feel like 8 o'clock is like a weird time to be back if you're hiring a babysitter. I feel like typically you'd be like 6 to 10:30 or 6 to midnight or something. It's a weird detail. This story already feels like a fever dream in the best possible way, so I'm very excited to read all 4 parts of this. Part 1, welcome to Scratch Cat's Coding Center. I said, "We're going somewhere very, very fun, kids." They spun around singing, "Fun, fun, fun." I rode my scooter to the place while the kids walked, licking every sign they saw. Those weirdos, I thought. They also sang the McDonald's "Let Me Get a McPick 2" ad song. I don't know what that is. I don't know enough about the internet, I guess. At last we got there. First we saw the song stage. I kind of like the songs. This one was a song about a man driving shirtless. I wonder who writes these songs. What is this coding center with a song stage where somebody sings the song about a man driving to shirtless? This is insane. I guess Joe and Emily liked it too because they hopped on the stage and sang with the animatronics. Actually, they sang the McPick 2 song with them. There was Scratch Cat, a weird blue breath mint, and a crazy purple ladybug. When a kid said, "Scratch Cat, help me," Scratch Cat rushed somewhere. I couldn't help noticing the breath mint wore blood red lipstick and that both him and the purple ladybug had endoskeleton eyes. I went onto the stage titled Talks Tank. There were tons of plushes of those animatronics on the shelves. They were $1. There's no way the story is modern times, because $1 for a plushie is absolutely insane. You should be buying all those and selling them on the secondary market for an inflated price. Joe begged for one, and I bought a Scratch Cat one. Also, I saw Talk himself. He was a red octopus in a tank. He told people octopus jokes and facts. I love this joke. What do you get when your cat has 8 legs? An octopus. But I wondered, where was the coding going on? That's what like a nerd says anytime they enter any single party. Where's the code going on, guys? Where's the coding going on? And yes, I know that making a joke about a nerd is like literally the definition of throwing stones in my glass house, so you can make fun of me in the comments for that. I walked into a huge room. It had about 1,000 desks with computers on them all. I sat at one, and Scratch Cat was yelling out coding instructions. I sure learned a lot about coding. I wondered what was next. Part 2, Scratch Cat's Coding Center. I love that part 1 is Welcome to Scratch Cat's Coding Center, and the second one's just called Scratch Cat's Coding Center. What was next was Aquarium Area. That was a place where you could visit Gobo and play in water. You could also draw a picture in there. That was what Joe and Emily did. Joe drew Gobo with boobs. Oh my goodness. I'm about to be demonetized for like sexual content in my Five Nights at Freddy's video. Who could have seen that coming? Actually, given some of the fan art that I've been involuntarily exposed to, I probably should have seen this coming. I was shocked that a 5-year-old could draw boobs that well. Yeah, put this person on a watch list, please. I had to use the restroom, so I left a random girl with Joe and Emily for a minute or two. After I used the bathroom, I checked on the aquarium area. Gobo was carrying his head around. All the little kids were crying. I had to get the kids out of there, so I asked the kids if they were hungry. They said yes. I went to the snack bar, and an elf was giving out Chex Mix bags. The kids both got sweet and salty. I got cheese mix. Some really enriching details that really make the story just feel that much more alive. The hours went by, hearing the shirtless guy driving song 99,999 more times. I still wanted to know why a mint was wearing lipstick though, and what that door saying enter if you dare leads to. I ate my Chex Mix, but Joe and Emily threw them at each other. Sometimes we went to go see Talk and her facts and jokes. That was until 7 o'clock. Part 3, Scratch Cat Closes. Something that I appreciate in a lot of the horror novels that I read is the way they kind of like acclimate the reader to the level of horror that's going to be in any particular story. They can do this by kind of like slowly ratcheting up the tension, or maybe having something kind of shocking at the beginning so you know kind of what you're getting into. I'm currently reading The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, and that has done a very good job of kind of acclimating the reader to the level of like horror and violence that's in the story. So let's see what kind of technique this story employs to kind of get us used to the horror. Warning, if you do not like horror or violence, stop right here at this exclamation point. Masterful. Scratch Cat's closed. I decided that if I stay overnight, I needed to keep myself and the kids safe. I got my flashlight out to read the rules. They said, don't run to the halls, don't scream or yell, not even if someone is hurting you, keep your poop in the toilet, stay with your guardian/parent/whatever, don't touch Scratch Cat, if you do, he'll shut down, don't hurt people, leave before 7 p.m. I was very scared. I went into the enter if you dare door with the kids and held my breath. If you're very scared and have to survive all night, don't enter the enter if you dare door immediately. That's like a rookie mistake, man. I saw some arcade screens and 2 eyes and a feather outline. The thing let us out the door. Now I could see it quite clearly. It was a bluebird animatronic with endoskeleton eyes, yellow feet, and a yellow beak. She took her arm, put it against Joe, and the next thing I knew, the bird was chasing Joe and he had no pants on. Emily and I ran after the bird, who ran after Joe. Now he was in his underwear. This story is actually making me quite uncomfortable. Sorry. I got my scooter and got Joe, and he was naked. I ran to the bathroom to cover him up with a towel, but when I came back, Joe was flat on the sidewalk, naked. He looked like Simba from The Lion King. Given the reputation that the Five Nights at Freddy's community has, and what some of the people in there have done, some of the bad things, this story is starting to make me very uncomfortable. The bird was gone. Only Emily was there with me. I suddenly felt so angry at myself. My parents would kill me. A lady's son was dead. I looked around. Suddenly the animatronic started up. The mint left his stage. He bit Emily. Now I knew why he wore lipstick. It was actually blood. Emily's arm was bleeding 10,000 gallons of blood at least. I stuck a toilet paper piece on Emily's bite. At least she was okay. Or was she? I think a single toilet paper piece on a wound that is bleeding 10,000 gallons of blood is probably not going to do it, but I have faith. I saw something horrible. The bird was back. She led me into a room. Then she held me by the neck. She bit away at my face until it was a mess of blood. The next thing I knew, it was daytime. Joe and Emily were shaking me. I try not to think about Tick and his bloody smile. The kids ate Chex Mix. When the place opened, we went home. My parents never knew one character of this story. So I think this is going for like it was all a dream kind of thing, which makes sense because this entire story was a fever dream. But the dream must have started when they stayed overnight. So all the stuff that happened before then wasn't a dream, even though that was also very much a fever dream. I think that's going to do it for this video of these Five Nights at Freddy's creepypastas. I'm kind of tapped out at this point. I'm losing my voice. Let me know if you guys liked this style of video. This was like unscripted because I've been working on something else in the background that's taking a long time, and also I'm working on other projects for the local school here that I'm doing, so I've just been very busy in a lot of ways. If you like this video and you want to see more, then please subscribe. At the time of recording, I'm at like 98,000 subscribers, so I'm getting really close to 100,000, and I would like to hit that pretty soon because that would be a pretty insane moment for me. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya. Take me up again, let me see the stars. Is there life on Mars? 'Cause I've run out of luck here on Earth. I'm a wanderer. Another trip around the sun makes these memories flood, and I could wash it down with the atmosphere. You're cool blue and crystal clear. I'm an astronaut flying above, but can't fall in love. Floating alone, brave enough to see the cosmos, too scared to say hello. And I know one day I'll be gold